Welcome everybody to today's regenerative design panel. I'm really delighted that you could all join us here today. And of course, where we are right now, since the dawn of industrialization, we've been burning through the Earth's finite resources and disabling the very ecosystem that sustains us. Sustainability may be enough to maintain the status quo, but it won't be enough to save us. Today, we're going to take a deep dive with industry leaders across design, science, and technology to discuss what regenerative design really means and how we can restore what we've already lost. Nature by default is regenerative. Living and non-living parts of the Earth form a complex interacting system. Our dependency on nature for our very existence needs to be reconciled, recognized, and protected if we're to build better futures for our next generations. So how do we work with nature as a co-creator rather than a resource? So I'm pleased to introduce you to our panelists today, Klaas, Oksana, and Arthur. I'm just going to give you a brief introduction to each of our panelists today, and then we'll dive into the questions. So Klaas is a researcher at Het Nieuw Institute in Rotterdam, has worked at the intersection of culture, technology, and ecology, developing and conducting public research programs. He's co-curated the Newhouse Temporary Academy for the More Than Human Knowledge, where he initiated the ZOOP project. ZOOP is an organization that collaborates with the other than humans in its operational sphere. And we're going to hear much more about the ZOOP model later into this panel. Oksana is a regenerative designer and innovator with almost a decade of experience in entrepreneurship, design, and material development. She leads Biome's design and innovation functions that are aligned with biomimetic methodologies. Biome is a multi-award-winning R&D-led biomanufacturing company where they allow nature to lead the innovation, where they hope to revolutionize the construction and create healthier, more sustainable built environments. And finally, Arthur, structural engineer, architect, and leader in circular economy innovation with MiniWiz, a trash material technology company that he's been developing and evolving since 2005. So the mission of MiniWiz is to upcycle decades of single-use environmental pollution into sustainable, smart building solutions for the future. So welcome, all three of you. It's super cool to have you here. And I think for what I'm going to do is I'm just going to dive into the first questions, and I'd love you to tap into, chime in where you feel you can input. But for the viewers who are listening today, who are design practitioners and or entrepreneurs, why is it important to incorporate regenerative mindsets and principles into our praxis? I'm going to start with you, Arthur. What is regenerative design and why isn't sustainability enough?
It's just the way how we need to design going back 80 years. So to us, it's trying to be zero waste, and because nature has zero waste. So as long as you create anything with zero waste, pretty much you're like nature. And obviously, why is that not enough? Because you don't make money out of it. And unfortunately, that's what we're incentivized to do. No one's incentivized to do goodwill. So a lot of business innovation, technology innovation are actually trying to facilitate that as much as possible.
And Oksana, I mean, you're nodding in agreement. I mean, in your practice and experience, sort of how does one design regeneratively?
Yeah, no, absolutely. I agree with Arthur. So the zero waste, or the concept of waste being non-existent, is a large one. In nature, there's no waste. Everything that dies becomes food for the new life. So it's infinite circles of nutrients and resources. So that's one thing. The other thing to us is it's a systemic approach to solving a problem. And I think that's what regenerative design is. In nature, nothing is resolved in isolation. So the whole system works in beautiful harmonized balance of all species working in symbiotic partnership, all nutrients being, exchanged between the species and organisms. So it's the systemic approach and the resolution or solution to problems on a systemic level rather than in isolation. And I guess the impact or the effect of regenerative design is the positive. It's the one that goes beyond just solving one problem. It's it kind of is the one that rewards cooperation, with other designs, and other systems. So it's an interactive one as well. Yeah.
Fantastic. I mean, Klaas, do you have anything to add to that?
Yeah, I thought to us, regenerative design is actually looking for the opportunity to generate life carrying capacity wherever in your processes. So not just in your immediate surroundings, but ever. This is beyond, let's say, leaving nature to do its own thing. This is actually really kind of restoring, filling in gaps in damaged ecosystems, creating opportunity, and really being concerned with, let's say, first of all, seeing yourself, and this is a mindset. This is essential. The mindset that this culture-nature divide is actually extremely harmful. And it's a hard one to tackle because all our systems are geared towards it. All our systems are oriented towards this split. So it's a really hard one. But to act on this attitude is really to look at every place where your processes touch the living environment, which is basically everywhere, but you have to start somewhere. So let's say our processes are designed to allow you to reach your operational sphere and to find, let's say, the most, the first points on which to act, and then transforming your whatever action it is you're doing, whatever process you're undertaking, into something that might increase the life carry, that in a very concrete way actually provides habitat, security, food, a chance at procreation, an opportunity to make choice for other than human life. It's extremely concrete.
I mean, what you touched upon just there in terms of mindset also requires an understanding and also accountability. And so this leads me into the next question. So when it comes to accountability to all life and all forms of life, Klaas, tell me, ZOOP is the title of the organizational model that you've been researching and evolving for some time now. Please tell us a little bit more about, how ZOOP came about, but also sort of what is the ZOOP model?
Yeah. Basically, the ZOOP model is three things. It's an organization model, it's a learning process, and it's a basis for collaboration. The organization model comes down to installing a human with a specific task in your organization, and this task is to represent the voices and needs, interests of other than human life. Of course, this starts with being able to listen. This is not something that stands in the way of contact with other than human life, but it's just the way in which those voices that need to be vocalized, otherwise they're usually unheard. We know this. So this person has the task to represent these voices and interests. So it's somebody with a deep knowledge about ecology, but also about the way this organization operates, and of course also has deep knowledge about how to work with people and how to guide them through a kind of step-by-step, a transformative process. With this person on board that has a specific mandate. It's not just, let's say, freewheeling advice. There's specific, let's say, advice that needs follow-up. This is built into the model. With this person on board, you go through a process, a yearly cycle, actually, in tune with the cycles of all living bodies in a way. Of reading your own operation, understanding how it performs ecologically, understanding what is its ecological integrity, and then by outlining this, by getting coming to terms with what is the current state, doing basically a baseline assessment, identifying at what point you can this year make changes. Basically, you commit to this. So it's a year cycle. Of course, you can make plans that extend for several years, but you break it down in things that you can do year by year by year. You evaluate at midwinter, where most living bodies go to sleep, recalibrate, and do the next thing the next year. This is basically, so this is working on your own ecological integrity. This is a model that can be adopted by basically any organization. Any legal person can add this kind of we call this the speaker for the living. The person with this specific task can include this speaker for the living in their policy making structures. And when you do this and when you follow this cycle, not only temporarily but also in terms of aims and learnings, you have a fantastic base for collaboration. So in this sense, SOAP is very much also a movement where everybody finds out about this, the issues in their own ecological integrity, in their own value chains and their own operation. And by implementing lessons, trying out and being very public about what you learn, also what works and also what doesn't work. Basically all zoops and everybody interested in these, in learning how to become symbiotic, can learn from these lessons. So there's two more details, but I'll leave that for another, I'll leave that for another point, moment.
Well, I mean, we'll be posting some links and signposts with information, but this is it's really beautiful, incorporating the voice of nature. And it can kind of imagine, an appointed person sitting at the boardroom, taking decisions and having that accountability. If we really boil it down, where is the voice of nature and how we accountable to our natural environments. Arthur, I've got the next question for you. So earlier on, you pointed to the aspect around incentivizing, and of course, if we are to move towards a regenerative future, regenerative design will have some impact in terms of how we form new economies. In your view, what will regenerative design mean for forming this new economy?
You need to have some short-term value and long-term value, and I think we, with all the speakers, with everybody in the scientific community, we kind of all agree on the long-term value. I mean, I think you cannot argue with anybody saying that, oh, you should be more like nature. We should, save ourselves from us being an ass, all that stuff. Yeah, of course, everybody agree, but there's no short-term incentive.
Yeah.
And when there's no short-term incentive, it was going to be perpetually turning this into a perpetual thesis project.
Interesting. Oksana, what's your view on that?
I think I agree. I think at Biome we also understood that pretty early on. Sustainability, circularity, or regenerative economy and design shouldn't be just a nice to have or something that you do out of moral call or ethical call. It is of course that, and it's full packed of those qualities, but unfortunately it'll never take off if the industry doesn't speak the language or economic language, or is not able to show the economical benefits. And it's not poor of those, it's full of economical benefits. And that's kind of what we believe in as well. And according to some research as well in industry, the biomimetics, for instance, and biomimicry is predicted to represent something like $300 billion in the US very soon by 2025, providing 1.6 million jobs and the rest of it. So it's something that the financial industry is expecting to grow anyway. So I guess it's just up to us to deliver now on this, because the benefits are obvious: financial, social, and ecological.
Yeah.
Klaus,
Can I add to that notion of incentives? Yeah, here is of course So I'm from Europe, where on a high level incentives are being created in like supranational policies, which is in a way, I think at this moment the only place where it happens, and still it's really an uphill struggle. National governments are not up to the job. They're like dependent on the short-term support mandates of vote. I mean, I'm talking democratic governments. Non-democratic governments have other issues, but democratic governments are dependent on the short-term mandate of their voters, and impopular measures are never going to cut it. So it has a very hard political situation. So I think here is where, something like the supranational organs of the EU come in handy. That are also dependent on voters, but in a more stacked. How to call this? There's one or two steps in between. This incentives needs to come from lawmakers and and this is in a way how it went with a lot of other, let's say, things that were morally complex. Transparent change are our thing. Representation in boardrooms is a thing. Like using non-toxic behaviors. Like there's a lot of these processes that went through this. Through this logic, which were quite outrageous and hard to foresee how they would ever become policy. Imagine what happened to tobacco, but and smoking. But these processes are, let's say, they go through these phases of being very exotic and how to call this, outrageous. To becoming experimental norms, then to becoming norms, and then just move to the background because this is how we do it. And so it's not unheard of. So there's this short-term incentive gets in the way, but we need to, let's say, leapfrog certain scale levels and then work backwards and then jump forwards. And then there's this interesting, I think the rights of nature development is very interesting, where some governments work on the national scale to create other kinds of incentives for companies. In Ecuador, it's quite successful. Not in many places, it isn't as successful, but Ecuador has included it in its constitution. Bolivia has done as well. In Bolivia, it's not working. This due to strong lobbies. But in Ecuador, it's actually making changes. There are certain. The national interest is defined as not just the sum of business interests in the short term. And this is a very interesting development. Yeah.
Fantastic.
Yeah.
I've recently heard, by the way, that Switzerland has it on a constitutional level as well, which is really exciting. They had a referendum, and circular economy and circularity is in the policies.
So in a way, I mean, and to summarize, I mean, so it's looking at the short term, but also long term, but also realizing that are our political systems, really set up for the task at hand. If I could also ask here, if we're looking for short-term strategies, and quick wins, if any, for the regenerative movement in terms of shifting this mindset, what can we do today? Looking at you, Arthur, what's your thoughts on that?
You need to actually have the technology. You have to let people access that. Unfortunately, most designers these days, most design schools don't even have the capability to do that. You cannot even evaluate what is sustainable and what's not. You cannot even calculate your carbon footprint. Let's not even get too ahead of ourselves. So if you just ask anybody, how do you calculate carbon footprint? Doesn't matter if it's a Dutch designer or an Italian designer or any Japanese or Taiwanese designers or Chinese. You just don't know. So they'll come up with lots of bullshit and long list of things.
So obstacles, barriers, kind of adding more complexities to something that we need to be driving forward. So the technology is there, and I've heard that in many forums as well. We have the technologies, but there's the willingness and the willpower to cut through and take the risks. Is that what I'm hearing?
No.
Oksana?
So I think, like, if we maybe consider that the regenerative society and economy, right, is that maybe the next paradigm shift. For that paradigm shift to really happen, we are now going through, there is like a whole model, right? And we have to go through a model collapse, which is what we're seeing right now. And then this paradigm shift is then happens once you go through the collapse and you burst with some new knowledge. And this is what Klaas was talking about, and you, Lisa, as well, that knowledge and understanding of who we are. And it could be scientific knowledge as well, but I think this is maybe the first thing that needs to happen. Technology is there, but it isn't in the same way, or it's there, but it's not taken on, or like Arthur is saying, the designers are not capable, or the industry is not there yet. So it is really about that awareness and understanding. And, you know, we have to understand ourselves as part of all of nature to start with. Without that, I don't think there is any quick wins. But if we can win that, that would be a quick win, and that would be amazing. But that all banks on communication, information, this kind of things happening and going out there and, you know, getting people on board. And once we, all of us, most of us, start feeling that we are part of this natural world, that we are not some, you know, we are a toddler species in comparison to the rest of the biodiversity, but somehow there is this segregation that happened. And yeah, we need to go back to the roots. And once we do, then we will be able to come up with the technology, more sophisticated technology that serves not only humankind, but the rest of the natural world. And the paradigm will then be unstoppable, I think. So it's just, but setting these things in motion first is a must-have, I think. But yeah, like Arthur is saying, the technology, I mean, we have the technology, for instance, but it's not just having the technology. It doesn't exist in isolation. It depends on so many things on our side, but also on the industry side, on the public side, and without all of those coming together, yeah.
I think the key is accessibility. It's not the technology, it's accessibility. There's no accessibility to the technology, and there's no accessibility to the assessment of the result. So this is just the reality today. I think another approach, like what Osana said, I think is totally true. You have to kind of almost appeal to a religious level. It's like a meta level, you know? Yeah. It's like, you know, like if you actually just direct into incentive, and then, you know, like people doing goodwill just by changing thoughts through religion. Not, I sometimes this sounds very iffy, but then you have to simultaneously become a religion and simultaneously actually becoming a quick incentivized, quick accessible thing that people can access to.
Yeah.
There's yes, there's plenty of technologies, and not only novel technologies, but also ancient technologies that prove to be extremely effective. There is a commons-based regenerative form of agriculture which feeds whole countries. It's there. It's not that we have to invent it. It's the problem here is indeed the systems that are geared that legitimize the focus on short-term profit, and that are isolated from these practices because there's so much to lose for those few people in the top of these systems. This is the problem. The problem is not the technology. It's actually not even the mindset for most people. That is really those power structures that keep the system in place, because in those structures, there's the thing to lose. For most people, there's a world to win. Let's be fair. Let's be very clear about this. It's a relatively few people that stand to lose in their own mind also. And of course, only in the short term, and then not in the long term. So if you look at it like that, it's actually quite a limited process. The problem is, or limited problem. But the problem is that this problem is where power resides. That makes it extremely hard. Okay.
Sounds like we need a revolution, right?
Well, yeah, how to chip away this logic. And it's not only a revolution, it's also a slow process. It's also like sometimes you cannot just conquer the island, but you can kind of slowly drown it by just, sorry, this is maybe the wrong metaphor right now, but by just circumventing it, by changing the world around it, and then it becomes isolated. I got this from sorry, never mind. But actually, there are, I think, a couple of quick wins. And again, here, I think for instance, on the city level, a lot of interesting things are happening. There's several municipalities in the world, like look at Paris, that changed its highways along the Seine into bicycle paths. That changed, opened up removed massive amounts of tarmac and changed it into gardens. And so this is not only, and this is not technology. This is just getting a shovel. It is really very straightforward. Immediately changes the experience of the living surroundings, brings a lot more humans into touch with the living surroundings. I mean, and changes the whole flavor of a city. It's fantastic. I don't know if you've been to Paris recently. I was last year, and the last time before it was kind of 8 years before. The transformation is impressive. And so this immediately getting in touch is not, let's say, it doesn't start on the religious or the philosophical level. It starts with an extremely physical experience. It starts with food. There's a regenerative farm in the south of the Netherlands that uses basically their motto is mycelia are better farmers than humans. Fungus are better farmers than humans, which is true. Don't touch the earth, just let it grow. They grow extremely delicious herbs and vegetables, and all the Michelin restaurants from the area get their stuff from there. And this is a way. This is how this kind of paradigm shift happens. This is where this loop kind of changes its meaning, and not that it's. I mean, surrounding this farm are traditional farmers that use a lot of insecticides, glyphosate, and all the good stuff, as they call it, which is extremely toxic. Okay, no, sorry. Sorry. So it's not easy, but at the same time, this high-profile loop of extremely delicious food in a place where all kinds of rare species turn up at the agricultural land again, it's proven. It's not. This is not theory. This is not a religion. This is not years of studying the Buddha. This is just go there and taste it. It's very straightforward. Yeah.
Oksana, you're nodding in agreement.
Yeah, no, I agree. I think you're so right, but it still takes that understanding, right? So to change Paris the way they have, somebody must have understood that they need to design not just for humankind, but to serve the nature, serve more than what, much more. So I guess that is a key, but it is a quick win. Once, you change your mindset, all of a sudden, there's so many opportunities outside of high tech, outside of all this innovation, actually, So yeah, I guess those.
Another quick win would be to stop subsidize fossil fuels. That's really this is a clear win for everybody. This is such a, I mean, here again, this power structure gets in the way because it's incredible that this is still happening. This would be such a, it would save everybody everything except for these few guys of course.
Yeah. This is great. So sort of also drawing in all the different kind of components here, which is also sort of about the shift of power and systemic change, which also requires radical thinking, radical action. And I think, just those examples that you gave of short wins, we need proof points to believe that we can do this. And these are ways that we can kind of take those measurable steps forward, right? But that radical rethinking also requires us to look inwards and start thinking about how do we live our lives? What kind of life constitutes a good life? We can universally agree on. We all aspire to having a good life and placing emphasis on values over value, right? So, question to all of you. Design to improve life, it's our motto of the Index project. I mean, and it's broad in its sense of what we mean by design. When we talk about life, it's broad in its sense of meaning of life. What will design to improve life mean for the next generation? Oksana, I'm looking at you.
That's such a nice, interesting question. I mean, it will probably mean, I guess, the same intentions as it is now, but the methods will be different. Probably the way you will see things will be different. For instance, I would probably if I'm tasked to design to improve life, I would think of evolution. For instance, I would naturally refer to nature. And I hope that in the future, this is what the design community and anybody who's involved in any kind of design on any level would think like that. They would think of how nature does it and how it does it in respecting the evolution. It's unpredictable and inevitable, and it needs to bank on the past, looking into the future, and all of these things. So yeah, I would just think that, or hope that in the future, design to improve life would mean how do we mimic that happening in the natural world.
And Arthur, what about you?
I still think design to improve life, that's definitely a generation of philosophical genre questions, because everybody has a different way of improving lives. Yeah, like, and they have but I just really think that to design to improve life, before we even have that genre to have their own say in what to do, you need to give them equal access to that opportunity of technology, of that thing to be able to do, right? To be able to make that change. And I definitely agree with all the speakers that the current power structure really does not allow you to have great access, easy access to many of these informations and technology. And that, I feel like we're not giving, doesn't matter, it's this generation or the generation after us, it just, they don't have an equal chance to design and how to improve their life on an equal footing.
Yeah. Klaus.
Yeah, I think two points or two angles I'd like to bring in. One is that no matter how you turn it, ecological regeneration is somehow the root of a whole series of crises. It talks to water, to clean water, access to clean water. It talks to clean air. It talks to food security, to, livable cities. All these things have kind of come down to forms of ecological regeneration. There's also talks of climate justice. All these things are kind of there. So, but that's a process, and that's a process to which every human body, but every body can actually contribute. And it's not necessary. I mean, some of these problems are extremely hard, but it starts on a very low level, very direct level. So I talked about that already. And the other one is what defines good life. And here we have this. So, and this is the like a couple of scale jumps ahead or higher. This is where the larger economic systems are like caught in habit forming, and this has a very interesting history. Why did gross national product become the indicator of a good life, where it actually only serves, again, at least relatively few people? It doesn't tell anything about how people feel their lives. And there's a very interesting discourse around this known as the degrowth discourse, which has politically a little bit of a complicated name, because it sounds like regression and it sounds like shrink. That's not it. It's just about decoupling good life from the idea of necessary growth. This is exactly the point. And again, here are examples. There is like the gross happiness index that Bhutan uses. It's not GDP. They use a completely different way of understanding quality of life in their country. Buen vivir, literally good life, is the indigenous principle that also is in a way translated in the constitution of Ecuador and Bolivia and several other like forms, rights of nature kind of approaches in several other South American countries, is about articulating life as something that is fully reciprocal and fully mutually dependent. And good life is a life that is shared, not just your individual life. Here, the individual comes as the toxic vehicle of capitalism, in a way. It's a collective. Of course, the individual I didn't mean the individual experience is not important, but as the single point of value, we're kind of at the it's a very problematic thing to be an individual in the capitalist logic. we have to look through collectives and where all individuals constitute each other's qualities of life. And there are examples. This is so I think this degrowth. So again, I mean, ecological regeneration is something that everybody can become sensible to and then act in. That's one thing, and the other one is how to transform the larger economic logic, the financial structures, and this has to do with education. Also, it has to become not only in financial structures, also politicians, because I mean, everybody nobody becomes a politician to just serve their, let's say, their personal interest. Usually there's the idea of the public good behind it, certainly in democratic countries. And then to actually understand that this public good can be articulated in other ways that growth domestic product and economic curves. This is just, again, it's not necessarily complicated, but you have to get rid of a couple of habits. And this has to be a concerted effort along several different scales. And I think I'm like, from my angle, from the New Institute's angle also, this is also a design problem. This is not about the technologies or the objects, but it's really structures, processes, educational design, all those things can be subject to design interventions. Yeah.
Wow, I mean, I think there's so much to draw from here, and you know, and I'm kind of really glad that you brought the subject around degrowth, and there is a lot of talk around degrowth. I mean, this is the 50th anniversary of Limits to Growth. It's like the literature that, you know, we're all studying and we're very conscientious of. We've lost a lot of very esteemed scholars this year, James Lovelock, Herman Daly very recently, right? So we are actually really sort of in synchronicity and resonance with the literature that's already been written. So we just have to implement, in my view.
Yes,
and I think, you know, just to conclude and to wrap up, I think, because there's so much we could unpack further here. Of course, we all agree that this is an embodied systemic challenge. It's rooted in our education and in how we can shift those mindsets in order to have the understanding. The accessibility is a critical challenge. Of course, we were talking about climate change. There's also the talk of these just transitions as well. Are we creating fair and just opportunities for all people? And of course, serving all life forms as well. So we're not sort of just taking the egocentric view of kind of maintaining the status quo here. I think I want to say thank you so much for your inputs. I think we could continue for hours on end here, but I really enjoyed this panel talk. I hope it's really inspired and enlightened our listeners today. Please do send your links with all the literature and references that we can share onwards. And I think, you know, by all means, we really hope to congregate the community again around this discussion. I think this is going to be probably something that we continue doing, bringing more thought leaders in, but also practitioners, and we want to see action. So thank you so much for your inputs today and your insights.
Thank you very much. Yeah.
Leslie's asking me if I could ask you one more question, so we might have to cut it in.
It was more that I really like to ask at these ends of the panels that are people hopeful for the future, and why or why not?
Okay, so for the purpose of closing questions, are you hopeful for the future? And
yeah, why or why not?
And why or why not? We're collecting insights here, so this might not get cut into the final panel itself, but yeah. I'm looking at you, Arthur. You go. Do you feel hopeful?
Definitely hopeful for nature. Nature will prevail no matter what. They are the strongest, most powerful ecosystem. They will prevail no matter what. I'm just not sure the human society will prevail or the linear economy will prevail. For sure, that is not hopeful.
Klaus?
Hopeful is not the word. No, it's not the term I use to describe. I'm pretty determined, but not hopeful. But it's, and everything we do matters, and so there's no reason to not do it. I think indeed linear economy is gonna, meet a hard stop sometime in the relatively foreseeable future. What comes instead of it, is, in a way, what we do is try to build something already of an alternative, and it's not sure that it will survive the maelstrom. It's not clear, but I hope it will. And I think, whatever is left of human society after this clash has to be regenerative. So in that sense, I'm from a rather distant view. I think it's the same as what Arthur says. I'm hopeful. But it will not be. It will be a painful couple of years ahead. That I'm also sure of. Yeah. Yeah.
And Oksana?
I'm all of those things. I am hopeful and optimistic, and I'm really determined as well, just like Klaus. And I think that's a personal choice. So we've chosen this. Well, it's my life mission. And yeah, exactly. And I think I do believe that people are incrementally are connected, and we know the solution. It's just taking time for it to come out of us. So for that reason, I am hopeful. I think we can do it. But like Arthur said, nature or this earth will regenerate, whether with us on it or not, and that's exciting. I guess on its own.
So we'll die and nature will live on. So that's the point of it.
Whichever way, right? You do. I love life, all forms of life, and then if that's the case, then that is positive news, right? So, and it's something. It's a perspective, I guess, when you're not ego or self-centered kind of point of view on the world and the cosmos and the universe with all of that it's seen. So, and for that reason, it's quite hopeful. And Earth has seen many extinctions. And it has renewed itself with more complex and more sophisticated life forms after each one of them. So, but hopefully we don't get there, and we'll see many more years now.
I'm hopeful with you all, and thank you so much for your contributions today. And I'm huge fans of each and every one of you, and really look forward to seeing you in person. So thank you so much again for taking the time to be part of this, and we'll be in touch with you soon.
Thank you, Lisa.
I will send you all the links for sharing and so forth, and enjoy the rest of your day.
Thank you very much.
Thank you,
Thank
guys.
you.
Great to meet you.
Take care.
Great to meet you guys.
Bye-bye.
Ciao.